We got news, we got numbers, and I'm making a major policy change on the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast. And things just keep happening. Hi there, this is Ray Dawson, ProStar Realty, Associate Broker. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, and I am hitting record. It's 3 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, and every time I refresh a browser, some new little news item pops up, and I have to think to myself, do I want to put this in? Do I not want to put this in? Okay, if I'm going to put this in, what am I going to dump? Because it's been an exciting week. We've got a lot of stuff going on. Everybody's suddenly paying attention to what's going on in China. Suggested last week that, because they had one of their companies that was coming untrained, that was going to have downstream impacts. It looks like it is having downstream impacts. China's also in the middle of having rolling brownouts because they're having issues with their coal supply. Apparently, command economies do not respond well to markets, pressure. Who knew? The Russians, the Cubans, the North Koreans, pretty much anybody who's ever tried that. But China, they're going to get it right this time. So, and because of the Chinese rolling blackouts and all this other good stuff, that's going to impact our supply chain, which is the second point of news that we're looking at, because we have freighters stacking up all over the oceans of the world, and they can't get unloaded. And so your oven that's supposed to go in your house, all sorts of doohickeys that we buy from overseas are sitting there not being unloaded and shipped directly to your local, Home Depot and whatnot, because the dock workers don't have space to put the containers. The truck drivers can pick the containers up, but then they'll take them to a factory, and nobody's got space in the factories to unload that kind of stuff. Supply chain's a mess right now. We haven't seen that impact the real estate side of the house, but I'm pretty sure we're going to start seeing that. We already saw that to a certain extent with appliances for new home builds. We talked earlier on this year about certain home builders just weren't not installing appliances. They were just giving you a gift certificate, say, hey, go find your own out on, next door or something like that. So it's getting tight out there. And this is, we have a very large interconnected world here with an infinite amount of little itty bitty moving parts, and they're all starting to seize up on us. So that's on that part of the news. Next part of the news, interest rates are starting to go up, which is going to affect home buyers, right? They're not going to be able to qualify for as much house as they used to. Some borrowers, some home buyers aren't going to be able to qualify for a house at all, which means we're going to have less demand out there. Maybe they'll take care of some of our surplus or lack of inventory that we've been dealing with for a while. And we're going to see that reflected in the numbers here in a second. The other things that we got going on is that we have the National Association of Realtor investigation by the Department of Justice seems to be picking up a little bit more steam and whatnot, and that's going to have some downstream effects on everybody. And that's going to be the bulk of today's video, because I'm going to describe what we're doing, what's happening, and how I plan on dealing with that. So let's hit the numbers real quick, and then we'll go off to the next. I'll be back after the numbers. Now the numbers for September 29th, 2021. Actives this week are 7,225, which is down 9 from last week, and the first time we've had a drop in active listings since last May. Of the 7,000, 2,382 of them are new listings, which is down 145. Contracts looking for backup offers are 1,121, down 25. Our pendings are at 1,915, down 48 from the week before. Contracts with buyers contingency for sale is at 109, which is up 8. And our close this week were 2,207 closed listings, or 142 less than the week before. And our coming soons are 885. So as you can see, this week is what I call a red week. Meaning, and every number I put in there, my little correct, what happened between last week and this week, every number was red. Every number was a negative, except for buyer contingencies, which was up a slight bit. Remember, when you're on the seller side, accepting an offer with a contingency from the buyer saying we have to sell our own house first, that's less desirable than just a straight offer that doesn't have anything like that. So let's keep an eye on this. This could just be one of those little statistical blips that we see. It's something we're going to wind up having to continue to track. We are going to be coming out of the summer months here. We are going into our fall little buy bump that will pretty much continue from now on, getting into, say, December. And then in December, people just don't want to move over the holidays, and then everything dies out. Theoretically, we all get to take Christmas off, and then everything kicks off, January 1st after the holidays. So here comes that little, buy bump that we got coming in. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the inventory, what happens with the interest rates. They're being impacted by the bonds markets. And going back to the whole hitting refresh and seeing new news coming in, you've got, whether or not they're going to continue buying back these mortgages, at the Fed, all these other organizations are going to have an impact. And it's just a lot of things hitting this week. We'll know more by next week. So one of the other things, and this is going to go into the next big bulk of our of this video, is going to be because of changes that are happening in the industry right now, both with Department of Justice and NAR, and issues with cooperation, and other issues that are happening just with agents out there on the seller side, reducing commissions to the buyer broker. I'm going to start implementing starting today, and today is September 29th. All right, wait, as I was, okay, I ran the numbers on September 29th. Today is September the 30th, so it's the last week, day of September. It's the last day of the third quarter, right? So starting tomorrow, if you want to work with me as a buyer, I'm going to require that you sign what's called a buyer broker's agreement with me, right? This is going to be a service contract between me, the agent, ProStar Realty as the brokerage, and you as the buyer, right, discussing how ProStar and myself gets paid at the end of the day. So let's go into this video. It's long. I go into the history and the background of what's been going on and why we have to take these steps. There's another video where I clearly explain what the buyer broker agreement is, and then a little wrap up. And then I'll get back to you after all that. To understand all of this, first we're going to have to go back in time to 1890. And a law that was passed called the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. And to sort of get it all, in a nutshell, the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 was originally passed to stop monopolies and restraint of trade. If you had, for instance, two rail lines both going to the same city, and those two different rail lines got together in some smoky room, maybe at the bar, and decided what they were going to charge for freight. This was in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. And these are the reasons why this thing came originally into effect. Back in the days of monopoly and stuff like that, or two competing forces in the same area, if you had a pizza place and I had a pizza place and we were the only pizza place in town, and we met at the bar one day and just, hey, you're cutting your prices on me. I can barely keep up. I'm going to have to cut. This is no good for either one of us. So let's set a flat, gentleman's agreement that we're not going to sell any pizza for less than $12 a piece. Or a pie, not a piece. And you agreed to it. We would be in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act because we'd be getting together and setting these standards. So this rule has been in place, since 1890, so for quite some time now. And it is interpreted in various different ways, and this is impacting the real estate industry today. It is well known that we get paid on commissions, right? It's usually a percentage of the sale. And because we work in a market and stuff like that, you do have some agents will work for less, some agents will work for more. What we can't do is get together in one big meeting and whatnot and decide, okay, nobody in this town is going to charge less than X percent. This falls underneath that. And it's pretty rigorously enforced. I mean, you can't even go onto most Facebook group boards and discuss commission or even bring anything commission related up. I was in a class the other day and I used the word commission as an example, dealing with one of these documents, that we're going to be covering here in a few minutes. And, there was have this huge conversation about how we are not discussing actual charge, and that the number that I'd use actually for an example was not any kind of inference, blah, 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 blah. This is how serious, we take these things. And it's because of the Sherman Antitrust Act. Now, that all being said, National Association of Realtors is actually getting sued by the Department of Justice over the Sherman Antitrust Act in some of the interpretations that people have of the act itself, and currently the Department of Justice's interpretation. And this is going to have some pretty serious downstream effects for everybody out there. One of the other aspects of the Sherman Antitrust Act is that the restraint of trade, basically. And so there's been a series of lawsuits going on for the last couple of years now, as the market has changed and the way we deal with the market has changed. The way consumers get access to listings has changed. Things have not kept caught up to the changing market in the background, and these lawsuits in place that are actually trying to push that along, going, hey, this is a new reality, how are you going to adjust to it? The first, doing my research, and the first time this really started becoming a thing was back in 2018, where the Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission had a brokerage competition workshop, brought a whole bunch of people in and said, hey, let's talk these things out, because we have various things going on we need to start addressing. And some of these things that were discussed in this meeting was a pocket listing. And what a pocket listing is I have a listing, I have an exclusive right to sell a property, and I don't tell anybody except for my little select few buyers that I'm working with. This is called a pocket listing because it's considered a listing in your pocket. So when the seller does not know that they're listing, they think they're being marketed to the entire market, and the agent is just listing it to his select friends and cohorts. Right? The seller is impacted by that in a negative way, right? Because they're not getting full market value because it's not actually seeing the full market. Some sellers are actually okay with that because they don't want a bunch of people tromping through their house. So that created a little bone of contention and something that they had to look at. There's also was covered in this whole thing, regulations of the MLSs, the multiple listing services, and commissions and anti-rebate laws in certain states, agent steering of buyers, and a backlash that was going on against discount brokerages. So just to try to give you a little bit more background on this. When a real estate agent or brokerage puts the property on the multiple listing services, for all of the other brokers and agencies out there, normally the competing brokerages and agents, they, in part of their MLS agreement, state, I am going to share a portion of my commission that I negotiated with the seller to you, the buyer's agent, if you bring me a ready, willing, and able qualified buyer that eventually closes on this property. Right? This is, cooperation. This is, what NAR has promoted to make sure, NAR does not like something called dual agency. We're going to cover dual agency when I cover agency in a couple weeks, but it doesn't forbade it. It's not thou shall not have dual agency, but it's strongly discouraged, which is about as close to the language as they would get on that. But you do have to have clear cooperation with other agents when they come across with a buyer interested in your property. And with the MLSs, this was pretty set in stone out there. It's like, I get to see every property that's put on the MLS. I am not excluded from seeing properties from another brokerage, right? Those brokerages are not excluded from seeing my properties from my brokerage. And everybody's fine and dandy. And then the bottom right-hand side of the MLS printout sheet that only brokerages can see is a small little number. And that number is, what is the other brokerage offering to me? You, the consumer, do not see this on your listing, right? It's actually a part of the MLS bylaws right now, is that is in the do not disclose. I'm not even supposed to tell you that, all right? And as a little aside, my first month of being a real estate agent, I would say maybe in the first week or two, as I'm sitting there playing around with this new computer program, I realized that number existed down there, that you, the consumer, couldn't see that number down there. And the way the MLS was set up, I could go through, and when I'm doing a search, right, it's an exclusionary search. And what I mean by that is we start with all the properties, and then I start adding conditions to it that reduce the amount of properties you, the consumer, see. So if you want to live only in Glendale, I say, okay, only show me Glendale. If you want only houses up to $350,000, I say only in Glendale up to $50,000. And you want to pull, and so on and so forth. That's the way the search engine works. That's the way the search works. One of the little fields in there, every field is searchable. Okay, I can adjust by every one of those. I can say I don't want to work with that particular agent, so that particular agent doesn't show up on any of my buyers lists. And one of the other things I had in there was the agent could go and say, I don't want the consumer seeing any listing that is paying less than X amount. And back in the day when I first got started, you would never see that listing because you didn't have Zillow, you didn't have Redfin, you didn't have all these other places you go to see and find properties. You're pretty much locked in at that point. One of the big changes to the market that Zillow and these other brokerages did is they allowed you to see everything. So the broker that you're working with, the agent that you're working with, couldn't exclude out anything. You basically saw what was going on in real time. Wasn't the most accurate information, mind you. I mean, back in the day, I'd tell people, don't go to Zillow. Those houses aren't for sale anymore. And I'd get a list of 10 houses, and I'd look them all up, and they'd all be pending or closed already. And I'd just call them up and say, why are you looking at Zillow again? All right, out of the 10 houses that you sent me, only 2 of them were actually active. And, mostly it was because Zillow had a much nicer interface than anything that the local MLS ever came up with. But the fact that mechanism was there, I threw up a flag and I said, hey guys, this is a really, really bad idea. All right, this basically, I think I actually said, was somebody going to get sued after this? All right, well, somebody got sued about it, right? Because later on, it was as the Department of Justice started seriously looking at the National Association of Realtors and the MLSs, right, the very ability to do this started coming to light, right? And that's very, very distinctly, that's no good. Right? That's what the attorney's saying, and that's what the Department of Justice is saying. And it's been going back there since 2018 that they've been chewing on this and churning on this, and petitions have been filed, and motions have been filed, and responses, letters have been sent out at 11:59 when they were due by midnight. I mean, that kind of stuff. So I'm going through the timeline of everything that's been going on in this. Now, the Department of Justice is investigating now, and they had almost come to a conclusion on how they were going to settle everything. Right? And they are negotiating back and forth. What do we do with pocket listings? What do we do with the discount brokerages? Discount brokerage is just basically a brokerage that does nothing but put your listing on the MLS. They don't negotiate with the other side. They don't help you through the transaction or anything. In fact, if you see a discount brokerage, it'll basically say, here's the MLS listing, talk to the seller about everything, right? Whether or not they were actually fulfilling, their requirements as a fiduciary to their clients, and that is negotiable. And this is part of what these negotiations were all about. Various other entities start getting involved in these things because Zillow starts coming in. What Zillow did that really ticked a lot of agents off is they were separating the listing from the listing broker. And there was a big part of agents and brokerages' business models at the time was a sign was as good as another buyer. And, they'd calculate it out. For every listing that I got, that sign's going to go on that property for about 45 days. Somebody is going to be unrepresented, not working with an agent already. They'll call on that sign, and the agent can transition that person. Let me show you the house. Oh, you don't like this house? Well, hey, maybe I can help you, find other houses. If you work with me, here's my card. And so, the old, somewhere around here, I got a copy of The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, written by Gary Keller, and that number's in there is quoted, at least in the edition I have. That's as good as one out. So when Zillow is suddenly taking that listing, and people are seeing that listing for the very first time on Zillow, and then they're selling the contact advertising, you click the little button that says, I want to talk to an agent about this house. You're not going to the listing agent. You're actually going to whoever was paying for the privilege of getting the lead from Zillow. And that created a lot of hate and discontent on that side. So you can see how this is being really disruptive to the to brokerages and to the industry in general. So these lawsuits keep coming in, and you started getting brokerages that just weren't going to put their listings on the MLS at all. Certain brokerages in little unique areas where they were basically the market. Here in Arizona, not saying anything in particular, but if you have, a little town out in the middle of the desert or up on the rim or something like that, and you only have one real estate brokerage in town, that one real estate broker and brokerage is handling everything there except for the FSBOs, for sale by owner. Why do they put it on the MLS at all? If you want to move into that town, you're coming in their door. If you want to sell, you're coming in that door. So there's no real reason for them to put it on the MLS and then have Zillow effectively take your listing, advertise it on their site, and then sell that contact for somebody who'd normally be calling you in your brokerage to a third party, some lowlander, just coming up on the rim for the weekend. So these are the lawsuits that's been Department of Justice has been dealing with, and National Association of Realtors has been dealing with. And they'd come to a conclusion. They'd pretty much worked everything out. They had almost come to a settlement. NAR was going to make changes. That's why you see the coming soon on the MLS right now. All right, that is to allow a public showing. Property is coming soon. This house will potentially be on the market, to settle that whole thing about cooperating with other agents, while allowed the listing agent to meet what the seller wanted to see done. All right. So, and then all hell broke loose. All right. And going through the timelines here, as I'm sitting here going through these timelines, and I'm looking at these agreements and everything, and it's multiple pages of paperwork again. Back in November, something happened. November 2020. And all of a sudden, couple days, they were wrapping it all up in October. They pretty much had it all, the agreement. They had passed the copy back and forth. Do you agree with this? We agree with this. You agree with this? Disagree with it. All right. November 19th, NAR comes up and says, okay, let's go. And Department of Justice says, yeah, we're not doing that rule anymore. We're going back to the drawing board. We're going to renegotiate how we're going to deal with all these things. And so NAR's consent decree, which they had carefully crafted while negotiating with the National, the Department of Justice, basically just gets thrown away, and we're starting it all over again. NAR responded with outrage. All right. Department of Justice said, yeah, see you in court. And so it all kicked off, right? So what really kicked, NAR's still sitting there suggesting rule changes. Hey, how about if we do it this way? How would if we do it this way? And Department of Justice is pretty much just, ghosting them, not responding to any emails, not returning phone calls. All right. And then January 25th comes around, and next thing you know, Department of Justice suddenly reappears again. Now, it is my opinion that the Department of Justice, this is my opinion, asterisk, editorial in place, that Department of Justice, knowing that the new administration that was going to be coming in and sworn in on January 20th was going to have different ideas about how they dealt with the National Association of Realtors and this lawsuit, they basically just put that on hold. until new administration comes in and they get their marching orders. No, go for it. All right. So, January 25th, a individual home buyer files an antitrust lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors. All right. They are trying to get this into a class action suit, and they were trying to sue the National Association of Realtors on behalf of all the buyers. All right, all the buyers, stating that because of the way the National Association of Realtors and real estate in general is done in America, that the buyers are now having to pay more than they normally would have paid because the seller has to charge them more for the house to pay for real estate agents to buy and sell the house. Make sense? So this is one of these many cases, and I've had this conversation before with potential clients, and a potential client sits down with me and they look me right in the eye and go, we want you to help us find a house. All right, we've heard good things about you. We hear you're the best agent out of all of our friends. Let's go find a house. But there's this thing going on, and what this thing is going on is you get paid at the end of the day. And we realize as buyers that we are handing money over to the seller, and the seller is going to take a cut of that and pay you. And we'd like to know if we could actually cut your cost. We want to know if we can sit there, and because the cost to the buyer is being, or to the seller is being offset by what the buyer is being charged for the house. Either can you refund us some of the money? All right, basically cut us a check for doing business with us, or can you just have that credited for closing costs and stuff like on the other side? And I said no, and let them think about it, and they decided to use me anyways, right? Without taking me paying them for the privilege of being their real estate agent. But this part of these lawsuits, and that is coming up against National Association of Realtors, is pretty much coming in. It's going, buyers have to pay more because real estate agents are getting paid. I think National Association of Realtors, my opinion, would have been on a lot stronger footing if they had listened to Ray 10 years ago when I was saying, hey, the fact that we're putting this down on the MLS listing and allowing agent to potentially, screen out these listings looks bad and is going to leave National Association and the various MLSs open to a lawsuit. And this is where we're getting at today. Buyers groups, buyers on this potential, I don't think it actually has gone to class action lawsuit yet, but it's on its way. Has the potential of going, basically, how do buyers agents get paid? All right. Why should, because right now the buyer's agents are getting paid because the seller's agent is agreeing as a condition of listing the property in the MLS that they're going to, that anybody else who comes in is going to share in a percentage of the commission that the seller's agent has negotiated with the seller. So where do we go from here on this thing? Because the lawsuit is continuing on, and we're not getting any kind of downstream news about where this thing seems to be going for. We have the antitrust lawsuits coming in from the consumers, going, buyers are being overcharged for houses. And because NAR has this monopoly position on the real estate industry, and because the National Association of Realtors acting through the MLSs has manipulated the market in such a way. And so what we've done, or what various organizations have done, is back in February of this year, California Regional MLS is now putting that in the public listing on the MLSs. So unlike here in Arizona, when you look at a printout from the MLS, and if you're on the public side, you're not seeing the commission amount towards the buyer's broker on that. You will see that in California. Couple brokerages have decided to start doing the same thing. RE/MAX is doing that nationally right now. Redfin is also sharing that information. Hey, this is what the the buyer's agent is going to get paid on that. So theoretically, a buyer could have the conversation with the buyer with their agent at the time, going, hey, we'd really like to see this house, but we realized you're getting paid 3%, you're getting paid 2%, you're getting money out of this thing, and it would offset us if you would rebate some of that money back to us. So, this is where we're looking at as an industry right now. If you are looking at getting into this as an agent, you're like, hey, yeah, real estate agents, wow, Ray makes it look so easy, and all I hear is I watch Home and Garden television, and let's go do that. This is what is coming down. This is what's impacting the market. This is possibly going to be the biggest change to the market overall since we actually went to digital MLS listings and since Zillow came into play. They're still working it out. They're still trying to have conversations. It does not sound like the Department of Justice is being very cooperative when it comes to, hey, how do we come up with something that meets the Department of Justice's concerns? How do we deal with this coming up? And how do we deal with another thing coming on the market? Another thing that the way the market is today, and that's the negotiation of the rust for listings. Right? Well, I've said it before, and this is how the world works. Right? When I am in a listing meeting with you and I'm trying to sell your house, I'm going to charge you for that privilege of selling your house, and that we're going to negotiate that. I'm going to say I work for X. And you're going to come back with, well, can you go with Y? I'm going to go, no, I work with X. What are you trying to do? But there are agents out there, and I'm seeing these more and more on the listings, where that number, that if I was working for you on the buyer's side, the commission check that Ray is going to get at the end of the day is going to be smaller, because agents out there are going, okay, yeah, I'll go smaller than X. I'll go this. I'm hungry. I'm starving. I'll list your house for free. I don't care. In fact, there's an agent in a state back east, and this was making the rounds on the various real estate boards until the moderators came down and said, oh my God, you can't be talking commissions. But she was taking listings and listing them on the MLS and only paying $1 to the buyer's broker, the buyer's agent. Now, that meets the bare bones standards. That meets the letter of the law, letter of the real estate MLS listings agreements that you sign. But it doesn't really meet the spirit, because it's not really truly cooperative, right? It's not even a 50-50 split. It's not even 90-10 split, right? It's a $1 split. Right? And in that case, it really comes into not buyer beware, but buyer's broker beware, right? Because when your client comes to you and says, Ray, I just found this house. I really want to go see it. And you go show it to them. And you have a fiduciary duty. If they want to write an offer, you write an offer. Right? You do not get to sit there and go, I'm going to talk down this house because it's only a $1, commission, or it's only a 1% commission, or whatever that amount is. Right? You treat every house equally in your client's best interest. You point out the problems, you point out the pluses. Right? You help them come to their decision, and you do not get to steer them. And I'm using that word because it's a legal word. You do not get to steer them into the house that's going to get you a bigger commission. Right? And now agents out there are taking advantage of that by negotiating a very, very small fee to the seller, getting the listing, and then not paying anything to the buyer side, or paying $1. That was wrong. Right? They're paying something. They're paying $1, right, to the buyer's side. All right, the buyer's agent. With the understanding is that the buyer's agent can always negotiate with the buyer, all right, for commissions that the buyer is going to pay for. So ultimately, they're taking that entire stress and putting on a buyer's agent who's like, at the last thing, I know you love this house, but I'm only getting paid $1 out of it. Can we work up an agreement where you're going to pay me for my time and effort? That's effectively what's happening in that state with this particular brokerage and we're still seeing how that works out now, right? Because it's not like the local brokers can all get together and say, hey, this person's not playing the game. This person is not cooperating with us. So we're just going to blackball their listings, right? They can't do that, right? There's moral and ethical and legal reasons why brokerages can't do that. Here in Maricopa market, right, I'm seeing 1% listings. All right, I'm seeing listings that are flat fee listings. All right, you'll get paid a grand total of X amount of dollars to show this house, to take on the debt. All right, because it's my time, my gas money, my opportunity cost working, and everything. And this is just the way real estate's always been. And it's not been a problem until now, because now what we have is the National Association of Realtors in a lawsuit with the Department of Justice, where it's saying that the very fact that the buyers are being impacted by this is an issue, and that we have agents out there who are willing to, take a discount listing, discount brokerage. I'm just going to take $400 to just slam this property up on the MLS for you. I'm not going to negotiate it with you. I'm not going to deal with any contractors if anything comes back on the spuds. All right, I'm just $400 and I'll throw it on the listing, and you're going to pay me $400, and I'm going to put $1 on the MLS for the buyer's agent. All right, and that buyer's agent is duty bound to show you the property if their clients want to see the property. And because we don't have that going on just yet, because normally what happens is that the agent has, informed the seller, yeah, I'm only going to charge you $400, put it in this MLS, but you're going to have to put something on there for the buyer's broker. So I think in the near future, very near future, that after the Department of Justice gets done with the National Association of Realtors, and after various discount brokerages and some of the online brokerages and some of the iBuyers get done with everything, for a buyer to get an agent to work specifically for them and with them, right, you're going to have to come up with an agreement between you, the buyer, and me, the agent. All right, that you are going to be paying me direct for my services of finding you a house and helping you negotiate the contract, get it under contract, help you deal with the inspection period and stuff like that, help you negotiate what happens after inspection period, and help you deal with the lenders and everything like that, and eventually get you to close. So we already have a document out there, and it's been out there since I got started, and I've never used it before. All right, I should have used it. My broker has encouraged me to use it, but I have never really felt comfortable using it, and it's called the Buyer-Broker Agreement. And what the Buyer-Broker Agreement does, in a nutshell, is you, the buyer, are agreeing that you are going to pay me a commission or a flat fee, right, for finding you and helping you through the process of buying a house. Traditionally, this amount is being paid for by the seller, right? But because of the way the new realities of the new reality is, I'm going to have to wind up having you sign a buyer-broker agreement with me to work with me. Now, the Arizona Buyer-Broker Agreement has a clause in there that anything that the seller's agent and the seller is paying for the buyer's agent, right, is going to be credited to you, the buyer. Right, or it's going to be credited towards the amount that I'm charging you. All right. So in reality, this has very, very little impact on the buyer ultimately, all right, until the seller is offering less than we've already negotiated buyer to agent. So now we're going to go into the contract. All right, I'm going to show you the buyer broker agreement, and then we're going to discuss a little bit on the back end. This is the Buyer-Broker Exclusive Employment Agreement, as written by the Arizona Association of Realtors. What this document is, it's a service contract between the brokerage and the buyer. And the buyer is asserting that the brokerage will be paid either a percentage of the sales price of the home they purchase or a set fee. Contract starts like most contracts do, with the buyer and the firm being spoken out. So line 1 and line 2, buyer is going to fill in their name, and the firm's going to fill in their name and the agent that they're going to be working for. Like all contracts, it's going to have a term, and that it's going to commence on a certain date and expire on another certain date. The broker is agreeing to locate a certain property meeting the following general description. This can either be a residential, land purchase, commercial, or a lease. It's also going to negotiate, the broker is also going to negotiate the acceptable terms and conditions for the purchase, exchange option, or lease of this property for the buyer. And they're going to assist the buyer during the transaction with the scope of the broker's expertise and licensing. So if in the expertise in licensing is a broker cannot step outside of their expertise or act outside of their license. So a residential agent cannot help a buyer purchase a commercial property because it falls outside of their scope and training. They can work with another commercial real estate agent, usually in a apprenticeship role, where the commercial person will guide and advise and basically be the primary agent on that. Well, the other agent learns the ropes of how to do that. But brokerages, and particularly agents, are very, very carefully told, do not step outside of your area of expertise. Case in point, I'm a Phoenix agent. I work Maricopa County. I've been down, I've worked in parts of northern Pima, like Maricopa City itself, but I would never ever work with the buyer or even with a seller, let's say in Flagstaff or Yuma, areas that are outside of what I'm used to. So on an agency relationship is your next line. Is going to delineate that the agency relationship between the buyer and broker is going to be either set forth in the real estate agency disclosure and election form. We'll have another video on that, or in another way as described. So at this point, we are saying that the brokerage, and through the broker or sales agent, is going to help locate a property for the buyer and help negotiate a transaction for them. In return, the buyer is going to make sure that basically that the agent gets paid. There's various ways of doing this, right? The first one can be a retainer fee, right? And the retainer fee is where the buyer's agreeing to broker that there's a non-refundable fee in the amount of X, right, which is earned when paid for initial consultation and research. So this is an upfront retainer fee. The fee can or cannot be applied to or credited against any other compensation coming out in the middle of this. Line 16 through 19 is property viewings, and it calls out to make sure that the buyer understands that a buyer is agreeing to work exclusively with this broker and with this brokerage, and he's going to be accompanied by that broker and brokerage on buyer's first visit to any property. If the broker does not accompany the buyer on these visits, including model homes, new homes, lots, or open houses held by a builder, seller, or other real estate broker, the buyer acknowledges that the builder, seller, or seller's broker may refuse to compensate the broker or the agent up front, which will eliminate any credit against compensation owed by buyer to broker. The agent is also the buyer is going to do their due diligence during the purchase. We covered this in the contract. This is more commonly known as the inspection period. Right? And they're going to act in good faith to acquire the property and conduct any inspections or investigation of the properties that buyer deems material and or important. In lines 22 through 25, we see the stigmatized property language we see in all other documents. We see this in the contract. We see this in the agency agreement. We see this in the SPUDs. Right? In Arizona, we have stigmatized property law. That means neither the seller or either agent needs to volunteer the information if it has, if the property has been the site of a natural death, all right, owner occupied by a person with AIDS or exposed to HIV, or located in the vicinity of a sex offender. Now, lines 26 through 27, right, is that the buyer is agreeing to consult the Arizona Department of Real Estate Buyers Advisory. There's a link there. Agents buyers working with me will get this in their orientation and introduction package. I hard print a copy out for them. All right. And this is going to help them, assist them in their inspections and investigations, and give them a general knowledge of what they're going to be going through when they purchase a house. All right. And then in lines 28 on is where we start talking about the compensation. All right. The buyer is agreeing to compensate the broker as follows. All right. The amount of compensation shall be fill in the blank. Each agent will have pick their own rate that they care to work at. Okay. And the compensation is going to be offset, all right, by the seller's contribution or the seller's payment to their broker and their broker making an agreement with other brokers to work with them. All right. So the buyer is authorizing the broker to accept that compensation from the seller and the seller's broker, and they also agreeing that their amount that they owe is going to be credited. The amount that the seller is paying is going to be credited against the buyer's debt on paying for their agent. So if you have a listing out there, a buyer broker agreement where the buyer has agreed to pay 3% of the purchase price to the buyer's agent, and the seller and seller's brokerage is offering 2.5%. Right? That 2.5% gets credited for the buyer's debt, and there's only a 0.5% remaining. Now, broker's compensation, all right, is going to be paid at the time of the closing, all right, and it's going to be considered a condition of closing as the other close of escrow condition that we see in the contract. Right. Now, the buyer is also going to agree that pay such compensation within a set period of calendar days after the termination of this agreement. Buyers into an agreement to purchase, exchange, option, or lease any property shown to the buyer or negotiated by the broker on behalf of the buyer during the terms of this agreement. So if we have a set time period of, let's say, 3 months, and after the 3 months, both agent and the buyer go their separate ways, and the buyer decides to go back to another property that the agent had shown them previously and negotiates a deal with the seller at that point, the buyer's agent has still earned their commission, and the buyer is agreeing to make sure that they're paid for that. Right? Now, lines 37 to 38 is in case the buyer has a breach of contract or fails to purchase the property without using having any other traditional ways to pull out of the contract because of inspections, appraisal contingency, or anything else. All right. And lines 39 and 40, we see this a lot. We see it in the contract. See within the listing agreements that the commissions payable are not set by any board or association of realtors or multiple listing service or any manner other than is negotiated by the broker and the buyer. On the next page, we have a list of additional terms. And additional terms on these things can be excluding a specific property. Buyers are out there looking for a property, and they know that they have a family member who may or may not be ready to sell a house, or they know that their family member's house may be coming up for sale while they're looking. They can actually come in here and exclude specific properties, say, except for mom and dad's place, or other terms, anything else that you can come up with in, Arizona law. Speaking of Arizona law and federal law, lines 48 through 51. All right, this is equal housing opportunity. The broker is going to abide by all local, state, and federal laws prohibiting discrimination against any individual group of individuals. All right, broker has no duty to disclose the racial, ethnic, or religious composition of any neighborhood, community, or building, nor whether persons with disabilities are housed in any home or facility, except that the broker may identify housing facilities meeting the needs of a disabled buyer. If you're working with a licensed sales agent in the state of Arizona, and particularly if you're dealing with a realtor, you cannot go to that individual and say, I don't want any of those people living around me. Don't put me in any neighborhood that has those people. That is a violation of the fair housing. Right? They will fire you on the spot, and you'll go out into the wilderness trying to find somebody who's going to represent you in that situation. But this is illegal in this country. Right? Now, lines 52 and 53, other potential buyers. Right? The buyer is consenting and acknowledging that the broker is and has the ability to work with other buyers at the same time. Sometimes these buyers might be looking for the same kind of property that you're looking for, and depending on how that individual agent and their broker feels like dealing with that situation, I ask them particularly about that. All right. Lines 54 through 61, alternative dispute resolution. All right. If there's a conflict, a dispute of this particular document right here, both signatories agreed that they're going to go through a mediation group, right, hosted by the local realtor association, and that the mediation on that will be binding. All right. If for some reason that does not resolve the issue and we go to court, attorney's fees and costs are going to be paid for by the loser. All right. Arizona law. This is an Arizona document. This is Arizona law in Arizona jurisdiction. All right. Copies and counterparts. If this document is signed by has two different copies, and both individuals sign their own separate copies, those two copies put together become the same copy. Other thing on this is that anything that is transmitted, emailed, faxed, or something like that is considered part of this. The entire agreement, this 2 pages here is the entire agreement. If anything is said verbally, it has to be written down and signed by both parties. And capacity is that the buyer is warranting that they have the capacity to enter into this legal document, and they also have the capacity to consummate and purchase property. All right. Then we have acceptance down at the bottom, and the last little bit of this, as you can see, is the management signatures on there, so it can be registered properly in our logs for review by the state authorities. And thank you very much. And so with that all being said, I hope I've explained the buyer-broker agreement to you and how it's going to fit into the new normal we're coming into. Not all agents are going to be using these things. I do believe that all agents are going to have to be using these things in the next couple years or so, especially with the trends as we're seeing it right now. I might back off of it and stop using them in the future, but I don't really see that happening. The trends for this industry are going in this direction, and especially with the continuing DOJ and these lawsuits coming in, they really are going to be winding up taking those costs and pushing them directly onto the buyer. And in doing so, I personally believe we're going to be impacting low-income home buyers, the people who cannot save up enough money basically to both buy a house, make their down payments, cover all the inspections and everything, and now they're going to have to pay the buyer's broker on the side. Now, here in Arizona, because of the way we have our contract and everything, the buyer does have the opportunity to ask the seller to offset some of the buyer's closing costs. And this is, to me, the really easy solution to this. Is you'll sign a buyer-broker agreement with me. We'll make it for a certain amount. The seller's agent is going to be sharing part of their commission with me on the buyer's side. And if we can calculate that out really early on while we're writing the offer, and if there's any amount missing, we can always ask the seller to cover that again, all right, as a seller concession to buyer's closing costs. So I hope I've answered most of your questions on this. If you do have any questions, you can call me direct, leave a message in the comments below and everything like that. As for a number just yet, don't have one. It'll probably be a sliding scale depending on the search price. There is a bare minimum that I have to make for each transaction just to break even. At some of these, just going through some of the listings while I was letting the last video rendered, there are a couple of houses I literally can't afford to show you. And it's just because it costs me more money to be a real estate agent, pay for my licensing, pay for my gas, pay for my insurance, pay for everything else, including taxes and the cut to the broker upstairs. I would basically be losing money on these transactions. So, like I said, questions, comments, complaints, concerns, go ahead and send them over. I'm ready for them. Just as a final wrap up, because this is a long video. Facebook has this thing where memories kick in, like every couple of years, every morning you wake up and Facebook is telling you, hey, this is what you posted this time, last year, year before, 5 years ago, whatever. Sometimes they're happy memories, sometimes they're unhappy memories. This morning's little, hey, Ray, 7 years ago you said this, was me doing one of my patented Facebook rants, and it was not safe for work. And I sat there and read it, and I realized that this is the 7th year anniversary of an incident that was relatively traumatic for the real estate industry. And it was a very public kidnapping and murder of a Arkansas real estate agent by the name of Beverly Carter. It reminded the industry that this can be a very potentially dangerous job to have, because we do wind up meeting complete strangers in quiet, out-of-the-way places, and sometimes nobody knows we're out there. And because of this incident with Beverly Carter, the National Association of Realtors had sort of a information campaign that kicked off for a couple months afterwards, and we were using the motto, "Every agent makes it home." So what Beverly did, and I'm not going to speak ill of the dead, because she does what a bunch of agents do, what I've done, is she got a call about one of her listings in an out-of-the-way location. "Hey, I'm looking at this house. Can you come show it to me?" All right, we all get these calls. If you have listings, you get this call. All right, and if you were a buyer and never been a buyer, you have probably made that call yourself. All right, "Hey, can you come meet me, a complete stranger, at this location?" All right, most of the times they're in subdivisions. Sometimes they're in condos associations. Sometimes they're out on a country road 5 miles from civilization. Beverly called her husband up, said, "I got a showing. I'll be home by 5:30 for dinner." She never made it home. They eventually did find a suspect. The suspect confessed to a reporter, and his stated reason why is because she was a rich woman, she was a broker, she had a lot of money. His defense attorney at court said otherwise, but he was found guilty, and him and his girlfriend were both found guilty of kidnapping and murder. It's nice that justice is done. Beverly's still dead. So, long story short, not meaning to be a downer, but since this is the 7th year anniversary of this, I wanted to bring this forward and let people know, especially real estate agents out there, watch your freaking back, people. Honestly, when this story came out, a lot of agents were sharing stories. Guy got pushed down, 2 flights of stairs from same thing. Call, "Hey, come show me this listing." Last words he heard was, "How do you think you're going to spend this commission?" And then he shoved him down the stairs. Women have had, been attacked, assaulted, raped. We had one agent here who actually pulled a gun on a guy and chased him out of a house. Still hoping for that. Fortunately, I haven't had that kind of situation. I do have an interesting knife collection of knives that I found abandoned at properties, and sometimes they're abandoned by people who are literally diving out the back window as I'm walking in the front door. So if you're an agent out there, if you're a broker out there, figure out what you're going to do. Don't meet strangers in strange places. Make sure you're meeting with a qualified buyer. Make sure people know where you're going and who you're meeting with, all right? Because this is what the nature of this job is. You guys have a great day, all right?